today I'm going to talk about the Power Apps Review tool. It's a simple tool that allows us to do code reviews. And for today's session, we're gonna look at a conference app. This conference app is pretty simple: a list of sessions, dates, events, venues where the sessions are taking place. The app, as you will see, has a certain number of issues, and we are hoping that this tool that we're using will make it easy to spot those issues. When you download the app, the solution file, and import the solution file, you will get a list of assets or components. One of them is the Power Apps Review tool. This is the app that we use. That's the main app where the code reviews are taking place. As you can see here, the app is pretty simple, a list of reviews, existing reviews that you might have conducted, but you can simply create a new review here. The requirement here is simple. You enter the name of the app that you're reviewing, potentially the customer or the group name or the team name that created the app, and then finally you supply an MS-APP file. As a reminder, to get an MS-APP file, you can simply go to Save As, this computer, and download the file once it's ready to be downloaded. And then finally, optionally, you can also include a Power Apps trace file, and we'll go over what that means while we do our review. I have one here. So once you submit a review, behind the scenes, we take the app, we extract it using the newly released library, which we call the Power Apps Tooling Library. So if you remember, a few weeks ago, a few months ago, we shipped the Power Apps library, language library, which is an open source that allows you to unpack and pack your Power Apps app. And it's the same library that we use today to go over an MS-APP file, to go through the app file by file and understand the structure of your app, from the controls you used, the settings you used, any media file that you might have included. We will have a good picture of what that looks like. So we uploaded the file, it got processed. Now we can actually go ahead and do a review. And the first screen that you see here is really where everything is taking place. This is where you work most of the time. And this is a list of patterns that we are watching for, that we look for in any app. Is the app have a delegation issues? Are they asset optimization issues? And we'll go over the list one by one. But for now, this is really a work area. We automate some of these pass or fail for these patterns. So we have ways of detecting, for example, that you might have forgotten some flags when you did your app settings, or advanced app setting flags, or you violated the delegation rules, for example, and we can automatically fail that. But obviously, you can go and find out that for yourself through the remaining sections of your app. So you can see here that we have the app checker section. So the app checker section is really all of the results that you already get today as part of your app, and it's often an unused area of the studio. But if you see the app checker result, all of the result here, we're bringing back into this code review tool for convenience, purely convenience reasons, so that we can quickly glance at it and see, do we have issues with this app? And you can see here that the app checker is really showing us a bunch of problematic pattern or issues. So for example, inefficient delay loading, or collect delegatable data source. So those are serious issues that have impact on your performance, and a simple glance at the app checker results will tell us that. The other section that we use here is what we call runtime analysis. It gives us an idea of which flags you turn on or off within your advanced settings of your app. So if we go back here and we check out all of the advanced settings here, there are certain flags here that can have a tremendous impact on performance, and we want to make sure you did turn them on. So going back to our tool, so you can see here that this app, we can see quickly that this app is missing a bunch of flags that could benefit the app from a performance perspective. We can see here the number of controls for each screen. This is useful when we see an explosion of controls, as we say, there could be other ways for you to speed up your app by using, for example, components or reducing the number of controls. We look at the media files you embedded, see the size, and give you some advice over that. But we can also provide you with some of the slowest queries that you have. This is if you provided that network trace file that is part of your review creation process. So here you can see that we have some decent queries here, 700 milliseconds. So they could be faster in some cases, but again, it's a quick view to see, are there any particular network calls that today are happening that are slowing down your app? Finally, we have a code review section or code viewer section. This is a very important section because it can allow you to freely navigate or search for formulas, for controls, and you can freely identify quickly any piece of code or any uses of any function or collections or data source in your code. So if I search, for example, for filter, I can find out where all my filter operations are happening in all of my apps. So I can get the screen name, the control name, the properties where my filter operation or where the filter function was used. We can see the number of references to that. You can also look at the list of tables that are used. Those are actual database tables, and this is useful because sometimes you want to identify whether a certain call is making an API call or is it or a reference in the table directly, or is it really using a collection. And then as you click through those data sources here, we show you really everywhere in code where those collections were used. And again, this is useful to detect patterns that can be not as optimal as they should be. So that's the code viewer sections. But again, going back to that app, everything is really happening here. Here we are clearly seeing that there are delegation issues. This is straight from the code review, the app checker results. That's great. We can let the customer know that make sure that your functions are delegatable, and we can point them to documentation for that. We can give them comments. All of that is available here. Here with the asset optimization, typically I would have gone here and checked out all of the files. This one in particular seems high, and therefore what I'm gonna do is fail that particular line here. And again, as we construct this list, the idea is that at the end of this review, we are going to send a report to the app developer, letting them know that you have some unoptimized asset. Here, we can tell them exactly which image could use some optimization or compression. Setting flags, we tell them exactly which flags they should turn on or turn off. And then as we put more iterations out there, and in fact we are releasing a new version soon, and we are gonna automate all of those patterns that you see here that are problematic patterns. And I'm gonna talk today about the N+1 pattern. So this is a case where we have a gallery control, let's say, that is bound to a data source, like in our case a session table. So let me go back to my app. In here, you can see that this gallery is bound to sessions. Great, we're getting all of the session. However, every item here, if you look at it, we are doing a lookup to a venue, which is also a table that is going to be pulling data from our backend. So you can imagine with 100 sessions, as you start the app, you're going to get the one call to get the session, but n calls, maybe 100 items that represents every item in the gallery, all making a call to the venue table to retrieve this information here. So obviously that's not great because you might end up with hundreds of calls at start time, slowing down, putting pressure on your system, potentially getting throttled by the backend. So those are things we look for in an app. Obviously, if you were doing this manually today, you will go property by property within all of your app to go and discover areas where we might have done a reference within a gallery to an actual table. So in our case, a simple search in our code viewer will tell us really what we're looking for. So if I do, for example, lookup, I can see everywhere we're doing a lookup in our database, in our app. Here, it's clear that in many situations within a gallery control, and the reason I know it's a gallery control is because I have this item, which is only available if you are within a gallery. So this title 2.2_3, this control is really within a gallery control. And here, sure enough, we're doing a lookup to a conference user table just to retrieve the username, last name, and first name. So obviously this is going to be super, so it's not going to be very performant. We want to avoid this pattern. And this is where you might advise your customer or your developer to go and create views, for example. Since they are using SQL, views are available for them to kind of create that view server side and bring it back to the client. But for me, as a code reviewer, I would go back to my checklist and I will definitely fail, and it took only a few seconds to go and find all of the areas where this could have failed. So going back here, I would fail it. The other thing that we do as we fail and we discover things in our code is we can also link it. So we can actually add this to a list of or related to a pattern or to a review item. In this case, we know that this problematic code should be fixed, and therefore we're gonna go to link it to the pattern n+1 database pattern here. And this is good to do because when we provide the feedback to a user, they can not only see that their pattern failed, but where in code it failed. So going back to the view details here, you can see here that we listed the exact pattern where we saw this. And as you add more code patterns, you will see this list grow as well. And again, this is for us an efficient way to let users what's going on, but also where in code they need to go and fix that. You could add obviously comments, and here you can say consider fixing using views to avoid making many calls to your say, for example, in our case where we're looking at the venue table. That's it, for example. So again, they will see the feedback, they will see where they have a problem, they will have a description of the problem, our comment, and any place where this could have been an issue. Again, as I mentioned, we're releasing soon an update to the app that will flag all of this for you. But again, for now, I think it's pretty powerful to get a sense that you can freely navigate your code looking for patterns that are potentially problematic. Another pattern, for example, we look for is the filter or nested filter, for example. So here we can see that this person did a search and a filter operation within a filter operation. This is more a problem with the readability of your code than it is for performance. That is a performance issue. Although sometimes this can have also an implication. Power Apps typically will understand that two filter operation here can be simply merged into one, and then you just end the conditions. However, in some more complex nested filter operations, you could end up having to download a lot of items only to to filter them client side, which is something we want to avoid. We want to make sure any intensive operation, any search operation is handled server side, and that is typically where it's efficient. You can actually expand the code. This is a functionality that we have here. In this case, we wanna link this problem with the nested pattern problem. So nested search, filter, lookup operation. I'm gonna add it to this filter, to this review item. And I'm going to also add it to the code review item as an example of where it becomes hard to read the code. So let me collapse this section and continue on. And so nested filter here, I'm going to fail it because we just did it. We found that there is a filter within a filter, and that's not a good thing. So use of concurrent function is also something that we look for. Are the opportunities to send multiple network calls in parallel rather than sequentially. So if we look at perhaps my code again and look at the app start, we can simply see whether there is opportunities to do a concurrent call. So I'm gonna expand this. You can see here that we're doing a multiple collects, and we could have wrapped this whole collect, all of the collects here within a concurrent call. So again, anytime we see that they could have used a concurrent call in their code, we would flag that. So going back to the app, again, looking at it from here, the app start, the onStart code, here is an update to what it would look like if we added a concurrent call. All right, so going back to the checklist. We'll fail the use of concurrent functions here because again there were opportunities to use it and they weren't. So this is a pattern, the lookup versus filter. This is where we look for the use of first of filter rather than just a lookup. This is not usually a big, doesn't always have an impact on performance, although it can be flagged as something that has delegation issues because the filter operation needs to execute potentially before, so there is a chance that you might have to call, get a collection of items and only take the first item. So that's not a great thing to do usually because like you're only looking for just one item. Why would you do a filter operation which could bring in more than one item, only to take one, the first or the first item of that list. So this is potentially a performance optimization, but most importantly, I think it's just not easy to read because your intention is obviously to take one item. So use the lookup if possible. So we'll fail this and we'll go, well, we shouldn't fail it right there, but we'll look for it in the code. We'll see if the pattern exists. So again, I'm gonna go back to my search first and then look for first of filter. And here, let me finish it. And then here you can see that there was here a use of first and filter. So again, we could just simply replace first of filter by a simple lookup. To symbolize really that we are looking for one user. Let's put it in a variable name. So again, we saw the pattern. We could add it to this problematic issue here, which is the nested filter or first of filter. We'll add that. So again, we're moving on with the code review. So far, I think we're doing okay. Control optimization, usually this will be flagged by default. We have an automation that will flag this as fail. If we get a signal from app checker results that there is too many controls being used. We haven't seen that here, but then control optimization is really about whether you have screens that have too many controls, and this is for us a way to check whether you missed opportunities to reduce the number of controls by using patterns like use of galleries for repeating patterns. avoiding too many forms and data cards and things like that. So in this particular app, we haven't seen that, so we pass this item. Before continuing on, I want to go back to the app setting flags because there is a lot to say about those settings, and I wanna do it justice real quick. So all of the settings are important, and I want to talk about a few of them for the purpose of performance. The explicit column selections is really what tells Power Apps to only bring in data that's actually being used, or columns of your table that are actually being used in your table. So turning that one on in your app is super important if you're using SQL or Dataverse. It's less important for other data sources that don't support explicit column selection. Formula level prefetching is an optimization that Power Apps will do for you. This one will help parallelize in case you didn't use the concurrent function. It will find automatically opportunities to call all of those queries that you're doing in your app in parallel. So that's an important one to turn on as well. Enhanced delegation for common data service. This is important for CDS. This is to avoid things like delegation issues when you use filter operations that are more complex. Delayed loading is very crucial to have it on because this is what tells Power Apps to not load all of your app at start time. And we'll see in our review that this app in particular have an issue with delayed loading where there is a cross-screen dependency. So keep recently visited screen in memory should also be turned on because that's also telling Power Apps to keep in memory the screen you just visited. So if you come back to it, it will be faster to load. This is enhanced performance for hidden controls. This is also useful if you have things like dialogues that pop out that are hidden by default, loader animations. This will just make it performant to kind of manage the hidden controls overall. The use of non-blocking on start rule. This is also super important to have on because this is what tells Power Apps to get you to the landing page without waiting for the on start to fully load the data or execute. So again, all of those flags that I am reviewing here and more are available within the advanced settings of your app. So the app maker here needs to go and turn those flags on for this particular app. So that's the app setting flag. So again, we failed it quickly there because we saw that there were missing flags. But it's good to have the background of why those settings are important for performance and has performance implications. So the patch formula optimization, this is really looking for issues where, or maybe a potential optimization when we're doing a patch. Your second parameter, which is the item to be patched, should be really you should just supply the ID of the patch or the item to be updated. So often, what we see is really another lookup within the patch to go and fetch the item and again patch it. So it's a redundant call that one can be avoided pretty easily. So we can take a quick look to see if this app has this problem. So for that, we can look at all the patch operations and see if we fall into this issue of patching where we would look up something that is already available to us. So here's a very good example. If you look at the patch session attendee, we're doing a lookup by that session ID, which we already have since we have this item session ID. So this one will trigger another network call, and it's only when that comes back that the patch will happen. So that's an extra call that is unnecessary. So the alternative is to use the bracket, the bracelet here, and then use the ID. So if you look at the pattern here, we can go ahead and fade it. So this is the required, really the required syntax for that second item. So we can fail that one because we know they should have used it. I can also go ahead and match or at least link that to the problematic pattern. That's also gonna be useful for the code review, for the person doing the code review to find out where to go and fix it. So so that is the patch. So let's patch formula optimization. Okay, going back to my checklist, I'm getting there. We're doing good so far in terms of just making progress. We have few more items to go through. This is so far, already a good list of items that could drastically change the the performance of the app. So then there is this start with versus in operator. So when we're doing filter operation, this is more about optimizing queries. And we do know today that start with end up being a more performant operation than using the in operator. So this is really looking for those patterns and then failing them when that makes sense. So you could easily look for it by actually doing in. And then look if there are areas where we used in a way that could have been different. So here in and in, this is potentially something that could be refactored using start with, start with first name or start with last name, and that would end up being a better performance from a pure backend perspective. So this is the pattern that we're looking for, which is about starts with. I'm going to add it. I'm going back to my checklist. And then let's fail that since we know it's failing. Again, our next release will automate some of this for you, so you don't have to go and look for it manually like we did here. But it's important to get a handle of how the code viewer is used to detect this pattern, because again, this list of patterns that we are showing here is something that can be updated, that can be expanded on. We have a way here for you and a whole interface for you to go and add more patterns or even update the patterns that we have here. So nested API calls, we did see one. This is where you have maybe an Office 365 call that is within a filter operation, that's maybe within a for all loop. So this is also something that we watch for, we look for in our reviews, specifically for example of for all with patch operation inside. Those are very heavy network calls, so we try to avoid them. So I'm gonna go ahead here quickly look for example a for all and see whether we see one. There is none, so we can probably pass this. So we can look at all of the filter operation again and see if perhaps we have used some unnecessary API calls. I think if we went and expanded this, we can look here for perhaps a place where we might have a nested API call. So you can see here we have a patch operation, and actually let's look at it in the app itself for change here. So you could see here that we have a patch operation, and here we're taking the first name and we're making an API call to Office 365 within our patch, and we're doing it multiple times. So that is really an opportunity here to put this in a variable first. Or use the with function, but the problem here is that we are making unnecessary API calls to retrieve just properties of the same object. So it's something that it's something we recommend to avoid when possible. So I'm gonna go ahead and fail that. So let's go back here. We'll add that pattern to the nested API call. and we can go back to our checklist. And here, let's fade it before we move on to the next one. So the data loading strategy is really about understanding your app from a data loading strategy, in the sense that we look at everything that you load in your app start, and make sure that you are only really loading information that's critical for your landing screen. So typically that might involve a discussion with the developer to understand the intention on why perhaps certain data got loaded first. But it's typically possible to systematically understand if a collection has been loaded but not used in the home screen or the landing screen. That is for us an opportunity to change a little bit the order of operation, where we delay a little bit more the loading of certain screens. So to illustrate what I'm talking about, consider this pattern here. So the ideal situation is to load only critical data, and hopefully you are doing that in the landing screen itself, not on the onStart. But the idea is that you're loading critical data first, hide the spinner animation. So you might have a loader animation, some sort of message saying that we are working on getting your data ready. And then later on you load more less important data that's not critical for that landing screen and maybe only used for the next screen. So this thing here is really what we look for this pattern. Is this idea that you really were very careful on only making the important call as your app start, because we really want to optimize or have that first impression of your app that is a fast responding app, very snappy, all that stuff. I'm gonna fade this because I looked at the app and you can see clearly in the app we're reviewing, if I go back to it, that things like conference users, speakers, all of those collections are not going to be used in that first screen. Again, we could do it manually by looking at the app, looking at every single control. Have they used this collection here called conference user? But a very fast way to do it as well is going back to the code viewer and look at every reference to this collection, conference user. And you can see here that other than the app start, it's only used in the edit screen of the conference user. That's for us an indication that it did not need to be loaded in the app start. It could have been loaded only maybe when you landed in the screen, after you have loaded first the critical data, which is maybe the session information, the venues, and then the user can get interacting with the app. And then things like conference user that's only used for the edit conference user screen, that is something that you could load a bit later. So clearly from a loading strategy perspective, this app could have done better. And that's why I am gonna fail this pattern. All right, so let's do that. Well, I already did that. So cross-screen dependencies here was already failed for me because the tool app checker already pointed out that there is inefficient delay loading. So again, as I mentioned before, if you have a delayed loading issues, you want to fix it because you really want to make sure that when the app starts, it's only loading that first screen. And if that first screen has any dependency on a different screen, you're gonna get into this. You're gonna get a problem with delayed loading, where any reference to another screen will get automatically loaded. So that's something to definitely avoid. If you want to see what's happening here in the fill color of this screen, and this is exactly what the tool told us, is that the field property has a dependency on a control that does not live in that same screen. So that's the style screen, which is here. It has a default button called default button style. So at start time, when we load the app, it will load this, but it will also load the style screen. For this particular app, it's only one screen that gets loaded, but you can easily get into a situation where every screen has dependency on the next screen, and that makes it load all of the screen at start time. So that's something that you want to avoid, and that's something we really have to be careful when we're doing a code review to kind of fix if we see these issues, and it happens pretty often in code reviews. So going back to our checklist. So here, so we did the cross-screen dependency. We know it failed. So these two questions here are about answering whether someone is using, that's not typical to our SharePoint project potentially or other project, but if someone is in the Dataverse land, and they could be using SharePoint, but if they do have the premium license for Power Apps, they have access to solutions, and are they using solution to package their applications and dependencies and all of that is something we try to answer. Are they using ALM strategy? Are they using DevOps to go from test to dev to production? So that's not something we can answer from the app itself, or not easily at least, but it's something that we typically would ask about our developers. Are they really using the strategies? And this is an opportunity to have that conversation of where to find the best resources for those ALM strategies and things like that. So for this, I'm gonna say not applicable, because we're not gonna be asking the user these questions in this review. The code readability, for now, it's not automated, but this is something that's that we look for in terms of like how many nested or complex formulas. So whenever we see a lot of if-else statements, switches within filter operation, within a search operation, and when we see that the list of formulas is growing, and there is no comments, that's our clue to let the user know that you might use certain strategies to go and refactor your app so that it's easier to read. So I'm gonna fail that in this particular app because we saw example of nested screens. So let me go back to code readability. So layout and teaming strategy. So those are again conversations we have with the app maker. It's visual, so we do need a human intervention to ensure that the proper margin, spacing, branding, colors, all of the design guidelines that you would have in modern apps, well-designed apps, is something we look for. We will be posting more resources and blog posts for users to go and better do a review of an app from a design perspective. But for now, this is not applicable for our review. And the teaming strategy is also not applicable. We have it here as a pattern because we want to have that conversation again as an organization or for the app maker, that there are teaming strategy that can be used today that we're shipping as part of the starter kit, the COE starter kit, that allow you to do teaming. So whenever we see an app that is trying to get colors, consistency, branding, all that stuff, but using maybe a long list of variables to implement that, we have a conversation here that guide them and help them go find an easier solution for their teaming needs. So error handling is part of this coding standards section. We look for places where error handling could have been used. It's easy to search for it as well in code. So if we go to the code review again and look for if error, and we find no reference to if error, that is a signal for us that perhaps there was there is an opportunity to improve that. So any patch operation, for example, should probably be used in conjunction with an if error, so that in case the patch operation fails, the user is notified that something went wrong. So that's something that we'll look for. So I'm going to go ahead and fade it. Hard-coded string, again, this is just looking for string that's things like names, any hard-coded string that could have been used in a can be used or can be maybe embedded in an Excel sheet perhaps, or even coming from tables that will hold all of the string of an app. Hard-coded string are a strong recommendation to not have. I mean, it's something you want to have external to your app, or in a place where you can easily update or even localize. So that's something we look for. It's not gonna have an impact on performance necessarily, but definitely will make it easy for people to go and update and maintain the app if the strings are not hard-coded. So hard-coded string, we look for them through code review in the app. So we look at all of the formulas again and see if there was any place where perhaps in maybe a quote, they were like a long string of like here, for example, is a good example of a hard-coded key. So this will be maybe flagged as a security pattern as well. But there is other, like we just quickly navigate all of the formulas here by scrolling and seeing if there is any long string here. So I think for this app we can pass the hard-coded strings. I know there isn't some obvious place where they have long strings, but just to be sure, we can also take a quick look here and see if we didn't miss anything that could have been reported. So let's look at this. This is coming from content, so it's not hard-coded map. So I think this is the only place where potentially this could have come from an external source. So what we're gonna do from our review perspective is pass this hard-coded string here. It's okay. But here in the sensitive data pattern that we look here, so we look for hard-coded password configuration, and clearly here we saw that the app had a key for this map that shouldn't have been here. So here I'm going to fail this, and I can add a comment or even point out the code where that's failing. So let's go to that. So now going back to the checklist. Data source here is failing, and we have the details where that's failing. So someone can go and find out the key. I can add a comment here that says basically watch out for the key. All right. So we have this last pattern here that I want to look at. So this is ensuring that the proper indexing of your tables has been done. So in a table like in a database like SQL, that's something we advise customers to do. This is more again as a discussion. We have no real way of finding out whether they actually have a proper indexing on their SQL database from just looking at the app itself. But we keep this pattern here as a something to discuss with the customer, so that they understand, the customer or the app maker, so that they understand that that also just doing proper indexing and even architecture or doing database normalization could also have impact on their performance. So that's more something for us as something as a point of discussion with the customer or the user. So this is it. This is a app. Those are all we look for, because we think that those are the most important patterns that are often overlooked and has the most impact on the app. Obviously, there's a lot more things that you could look for. We want to make sure that the app review is not something that takes hours. It's something we can do in half an hour to an hour. But for your needs, you can always go back to the pattern sections here and add more patterns to your list. So you could add a new pattern. You could update all existing patterns. Notice that for every single pattern, we have the ability to add resources for your developers. So you could point them to blog posts or documentation, so that when they get the report, they will get what patterns they failed, why it failed, like exactly where in code it failed, or whether, or is it the app checker that pointed out that it failed. But also it would tell them, go and read more about this pattern, learn about how to do this pattern better. So again, you could add your new patterns, you could update existing patterns, and all of those patterns will then be created for the next review, or added to the existing review that you're working on. So that's for the patterns here. Finally, I think the last piece of functionality that's useful is just the report section. So once you send a report, you get an email notification that a report has been sent to your inbox, and that will have all of the information of the review that you can send to the app maker for to go over and fix their app. So that's it. That was like really a quick code review. Again, this app didn't do well. It get 19% success rate. But I hope it illustrates some of the main patterns and how we find some of those problems that an app might have in while doing a code review. Thank you.